Hey friends, today I'm excited to share Crystal Kung Minkoff with you. We are talking all about being first generation American kids. We're talking about being caretakers to our parents. Crystal had to take care of her dad who dealt with Alzheimer's. You guys know my mom dealt with brain cancer. Crystal, it was a tough journey as we discussed in this episode.
Yes, tough and beautiful at the same time.
Don't forget to hit subscribe, friends. Hello, friends. Today's going to be a great day. You know why?
Why, Maria?
Why? She's never going to get it, guys. I'm quitting. It's over. You know why it's going to be a great day? Because I don't need Kelsey to say why. It's because we are going to know better and get better, and we're going to do it together because we're better together, friends. Welcome to the show, everyone. If you are a new listener here on the Heal Squad, that's what we do every day. We know better to get better, and then we do better, and we do it all together. So welcome to this little pod of greatness in here. I love this journey that we're on, and I'm healing every single day in every way, and I hope you are too. And if you're new, you will. I promise. Right, Kelsey? Right, Carolina?
Girl, yes. I like what you just said, our little pod of greatness.
I mean, it's true. We have amazing people on this show every single day that help us, that inspire us, that teach us something new. And our guest today is going to help us with that as well. But first, our quote of the day: to fall in love with yourself is the first secret to happiness. And that is Robert Morley. Heal Squad. We have an amazing guest on the show today. You might know her from the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Her name is Crystal Kung Minkoff. She's been a regular on the show since 2021. She's also an entrepreneur and co-founder of Real Coco, a coconut beverage company. We are chatting all about being a child of immigrants, what that kind of entails, her journey being a Chinese American. And then also we deep dive into caretaking and our parents' journeys. She had to take care of her dad with Alzheimer's for 9 years. And she describes in detail how painful that journey was. It was a very emotional interview. And I feel like any one of us who has had to go on that journey of taking care of someone will relate, will understand. And if you haven't, it is such an important conversation to be aware of, because that day will come, unfortunately. And there are a lot of tips in here for you to start preparing for, start looking into, and just be ahead, right? So without further ado, here's my conversation with Crystal. I guess first, I'd love to chat a little bit, being an immigrant daughter myself, a little bit about kind of what it was like to grow up in that way as well.
Yeah. It's funny. It's like all So, but I do remember constantly feeling like comparing like what their life must be like, even though we were all essentially the same growing up in LA. It's sort of their dynamics in the household seems so different than mine. Ours was very structured but it was just ingrained in every which way of my life, in terms of just where we sat at the table, and I remember, my girlfriend, Kimberly, later as adult, she was like, it feels so severe, and I was like, well, to you it's severe, and she's Caucasian, grew up in LA many generations. I'm like, to me, it's structure and it's like respect. So It's where I always knew where to sit in every restaurant, because the grandparents sit on the inside and it's generational. And as you get younger, so I would always sit at the, and you think about like seats when you go out, you're facing the room. So like that's a different way of thinking about it in terms of hierarchy, but that's how it was in just everywhere we went with my family. So we always knew where to sit. And that was really indicative of how I always knew where I was in my place in life.
That's actually kind of cool, because you're insulating the grandparents, right? And protecting them.
Yeah.
I think that's really neat.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you get older, it shifts. And now my kids are at the end and they know exactly where to sit too.
So you do it with your kids too?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
They know. And it's interesting because, when I met Rob, he was, a successful director and he probably sat on the inside at dinner tables, but he knew exactly where to sit and he was always on the outside and he loved every second of it. He just really absorbed and appreciated sort of how that family dynamic worked. So he knew exactly he was on the outside and he had a
So
word to
did
say
you
it.
grow up speaking Chinese first?
So my parents only spoke Chinese and we would always speak back in English. And I think that is a very common first generation kid thing to do because I wanted to be American, and
Yeah.
I was American, but in the way I thought American was. And then, so that's, yeah. So I understand
Your
it.
first language had to be Chinese.
Well, no, my first language I think of is, I guess so. Like that's all I listened to at home. But
Because
outside,
mine was Greek. My first language was Greek. My parents only spoke Greek.
yeah.
I
Did
remember
you speak
going to
back
school.
English or Greek?
No, we weren't allowed to speak English.
Right. So I guess I think English is still my first language because it's what I spoke. But like if I go to my grandparents, they couldn't speak English. So I'd only speak Chinese to them. But in my house, it was Chinese and then English back. It was like that all the time.
What did your parents do for a living?
My mom didn't work when I was growing up, started working later. She ended up becoming like a liaison between China and US with an architecture firm. While China was building infrastructure in that she helped connect American companies to China because my mom is like the social butterfly in both countries. She just knew everybody. And my dad was an oral surgeon.
Oh, wow. Okay. So when they came to this country, they didn't speak any English?
No,
Or they
English,
did?
no.
So they must have at some point kind of learned because I would go to school and learn and come back and teach them. Soap
My
operas.
parents had been here for a long time. But my parents met in America because my dad was 23 years older than my mom. So he had emigrated here first and then my mom, and then they met many years later.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being a child of immigrants is such a unique experience.
Yeah.
And I think it's very similar. Like we're all kind of in the same boat when you're a child of immigrants, but there's variations obviously, but that's why my Big Fat Greek Wedding really connected with every culture.
Sure. It's really there are more children of immigrants in the world than not. But that's what makes, I think LA interesting because they're immigrants from all over the world. But it's funny, my dad was in America since he passed, but he was here for, 50 years and his English was still terrible. So it was so funny. He was like, being a surgeon, my dad was so sweet, so humble. And he's like, being a surgeon was such a good job for me because I just had to tell them what I was doing. And it was always the same, like 10 surgeries. And then I'd put them to sleep. I wouldn't have to talk to him because he felt so like embarrassed. He didn't know how to speak English well. So,
oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So it was like a good cheese. And I remember when I was pre-med and I decided not to go to medical school, he's like, oh, it's better for you because you always talk. You never stop talking. So doctors don't talk that much.
Yeah. I saw that you were pre-med at one point. Do you feel like you were going down that path because that's what your parents wanted you to do?
I think that's the only path I knew. I didn't allow myself to open my mind and think of other options. I loved it. I loved science. I loved math. I enjoyed it. But I think the pressure of growing up as a Chinese kid, as an immigrant's child, is to lead a path that they feel like they can go back to their other immigrant, understand, like other parents, like, oh, my kid does this.
Yep.
It's just a generational thing. It's like, you want to make them proud. And it's funny, they never pressured me. They weren't like, you need to be a doctor. I was just, so when I told my dad I wasn't I wasn't going to go to medical school in the end. He was like, yeah, like that makes sense for you. But he was like, you had to figure that on your own. My dad was really cool about it. And my mom too. But yeah, I just wanted to, I remember I struggled for a long time when I chose not to, because I just wanted to have Dr. Kung, I wanted to have some sort of label that established me as something that I thought had value. So then I was like, oh, maybe I'll go to law school. Or maybe I just was like, I had to go to higher education in my mind. Like that was my only plan.
And then what happened?
I met Rob. And then I kept teetering back and forth. So I was still thinking about medical school. It wasn't like final, because I was still an undergrad, and then I was looking up getting my JD and going to law school. And then eventually, we got engaged very quickly. And so it was like, okay, so I'm going to get married and then think about it. So I just kept pushing it. But one of my best friends, she's in her mid-50s and she's on her second PhD now at Pepperdine. So it's really inspiring me. I'm like, maybe I will go back, and I'm not quite sure, but
wow,
business school or something. I don't know. But I ended up going to culinary school for fun. And I think I did that also in a way to I just think I needed like another something. Like it wasn't a degree that I felt like was the same, but it was like I needed to I like school. I'm like, I could be a professional student.
That's so funny.
Did you
I had to trick myself into believing I loved school and I was really good and did great in my grades and stuff. But I look back, I'm like, I hated the social aspect of it. It was torture. So
were you not
like, I
a
hate
popular
school.
girl? And
no, I suffered a lot. And then at some point, it was like a weird thing where I was like popular, but didn't hang out with the popular kids. Like people knew me or knew like I was cool with everybody, but at the same time, not.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I felt that way too. I always felt like I had like a space, I wasn't ever like a popular person at all. Like in
100% never.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was so classic. I mean, like my daughter's going to be 8 next week, and like Mean Girls is like a constant discussion amongst her friends. They like love it. So like everything is like related to that movie now. Like, she's this person that's literally this morning, she was like lying in bed with me. Like, this person's so mean to me. And I'm like, she's a mean girl. And she's like, yeah, but like everybody wants to be your friend. I'm like, no, they're just scared of her. Like, I literally am like following the movie and I'm like, oh my God, like this is what she's heading into.
Wow.
And, but you have to go through those growing pains. And it's like, part of me is like, I want to like die for her. And like, I feel so bad. And at the same time, like we all went through it. And then it makes you like a nicer person if you get to the other side.
True. Yeah.
So,
that's so wild. Yeah. Your parents, I know that you lost your dad, I think like 6 years ago, probably now, right?
Yeah.
I just lost my mom under 2 years ago. I'd love to know more about what you learned about Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Because, it's definitely a disease we are going to be dealing with more and more. The numbers are astronomical. And I think by 2025, the percentage of the country that's going to have it's going to be crazy.
Yeah. It's a systemic problem, and it's not going to go away because with the new medical advances, everyone's getting older. Mm-hmm. So it's inevitable. Like as everyone keeps getting older, Alzheimer's is not it's not growing with that. So you're still starting at the same age. So then now the problem is not only going to be people with Alzheimer's, but how are you going to have caretakers? And you're going to pull those people out of the workforce because a lot of people can't afford it. And that was an issue that we were having. We were just really trying to figure out, people think it's like, oh, it's so expensive.
It's so expensive.
Yeah, it's really painfully expensive. And we were
even for people who have more.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's really painful because you don't know when it ends. There's no end date.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my dad was a lot older than my friend's parents because my dad had me in his 50s. So I was like sort of on my own, experiencing this. And my brother was living in China still, and he still lives in China. But so I really felt like alone, but I had Rob there to help me, like, thank God. But I think this is likely very normal for people who are suffering, like as caretakers, as family members suffering through this. I didn't know where to go. And so what I spent most of those early years while he started showing signs was constantly testing. I would be like, we went to like UCLA, and I'm like, let's like do the cognitive testing. And like, he would do it was like almost like homework, I'm like, it was almost like I was spending so much time trying to prove that he didn't have it.
Yeah.
I wanted to find like one moment where I'm like, oh, he read that answer right. Like, he doesn't have it.
Yeah, he's just older, and
I
that's
just
what
want to find
happened.
every excuse because it was just so scary and painful. And then when you reach, I think, past 75, you're required to take a written test for your driver's license. It's just as you age. And of course, like, I hated it. I was so afraid of it. And then, but there's a reason why they do that. And I was like I sat with him on his couch for weeks studying, and I'm like, let's do it in English. Let's do the Chinese one. Like he just couldn't answer them. And again, it was the same thing. I was like, you can't lose your license. Like, now we're going to be stuck at home. And we were not ready for a caretaker yet because of the cost prohibitive. It was so expensive. And so it was just those, like, it was years of chasing the inevitable. And he was deteriorating as everyone does. Like, there's no reversing it. So,
how old was he when he was diagnosed technically?
I think he was, let me see, he was 85. He was like 76.
Wow.
Yeah. Like,
That's
it was
so
later.
Young.
But
my dad's 77. I think he just turned 76, turning 77.
So you feel like it's young. I know. Well, I
think it's young because my dad's a beast. He can still build things, and he can outdo a 20-year-old all day. Like,
I guess
he's having memory issues too.
In his mid 80s, but so yeah, he was like late 70s. But he retired like early 70s. Like, he retired late, and I remember that was a struggle for him. And I think that was that catapulted it. Like, that was a catalyst to the beginning of the end for him, because it's like all he knew. He came from China, and he was like, came from communist China, and just worked. And it was a very stable sort of, he went to the office every day in Mission Hills, off Ronaldo, like Valley kids, and then came home. Like, that's what he did. And then all of a sudden he's like, I'm going to retire, because he's at this age, but then he had nothing to work with. He had nothing. He would just sit and watch, like, literally we'd watch Lakers all day and night and just round the clock. And because my dad never had hobbies. He was an immigrant. You don't pay. And I remember my mom was like, go golf. And my dad's like, first of all, I don't golf in my 70s. I'm not going to pay for it, because we just didn't grow up with extra. My dad was not going to spend his extra now in his late years. He was going to try to save on every penny for us. So he didn't have those extracurriculars, which I do believe helps. I think what I'm starting to discover is everything helps, when it comes to food, it comes to lifestyle, it comes to environment, it comes to, global warming is part of it, and what's in our environment, that kind of stuff. Like, I think all of it is part of it. But it was a very, very painful experience. And it lasted about 9 years.
9 years.
Yeah. And I think that's actually the average person with Alzheimer's, from diagnosis to death, is 9 years.
Wow. So what did you guys do? Because right now someone's going to look at you and they're like, you're on Housewives and, you're doing great. But this was before that.
This was before that. Yeah. Yeah.
But even
we've always had like I'm so lucky that Rob was so supportive and helped my family. But like my dad was an neurosurgeon, but that was our only income. It wasn't, it was not like, we didn't have any access. And so we lived, we had to sell their house. Like it was a lot. It wasn't like, oh, let's just put him in a home that's like so fancy. The thing is, my
By the way,
dad,
there aren't fancy homes either. That's the hard thing.
like
The
base,
nursing
like,
home situation is a
acceptable.
disaster.
100, like that's actually like a business that really needs to like.
Crystal, if you want to do it with me, I am like one of my things lately. I have another friend whose dad is in a nursing home, almost died because they weren't paying attention to him. And I understand their side of it.
Yeah.
And I understand the patient side of it, but it has to get fixed.
Yes, I'm down with it. We have discussed for many years. Well, that was part of the journey of like, maybe we'll build a business with this because there's no place that feels safe for them, you know? So there's aging homes, and then you have to put them in memory care because that's a different level, and it doubles the price because it's 24 hours because they wander. So it started with my dad in this big house that I grew up in, and we lived like in a, you know, like a house in Northridge, big valley house. And then it started to feel like they had to move. It was too much, the house. And then we bought them like a condo in Sherman Oaks, and very modest. But we bought the top floor because we knew my dad would get up in the middle of the night and roam around. So we're like, top floor is the best because it will take a lot of stairs and
for him to try to escape.
Yeah. And at this time we hired someone to live in with us, and she was Chinese. So, cause my dad just stopped speaking English at that point. You could only converse in Chinese. And that was another problem because anytime we looked at a home, there was no Chinese speaking place other than, we got to a point where like, should we move him to China? Like it was crazy.
It's a whole other barrier. Wow.
It was a lot. And then we bought them a place, and he found his way out.
Oh my God.
And then he got lost for like 6 hours, and we had helicopters, like the police were searching for him. And we would always have like something in his wallet with his phone number. But like, he didn't know that. He can't remember that he has something to keep him safe. And it was a random LA day that started raining. And so my dad just, we got a call from the police saying, we found him. And, you know, you think of the worst.
Yeah.
You think of the worst. And a liquor store owner found him like standing outside, and it was raining, and he was in the rain, and he brought him inside. And so he walked like 7 miles down Ventura, and he found him, and he said, "Do you have a wallet?" And I'm sure my dad was scared, you know, but he found the phone number and then called, and then we found him, and we brought him back, and his feet were all blistered because it was raining. And
he walked barefoot.
I said, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, why?" He was looking around. There's police everywhere and our family. And he's like, "Why is everyone so worried? What's going on? Like, why is everyone here?" And it was like so sad. And at the same time, I felt like, thank God he doesn't remember the fear of, but it's like, that's Alzheimer's patients. That's why they act out, because they are constantly in fear, because they're constantly confused. Wow. You know, like imagine every 2 minutes not knowing what happened 2 minutes ago, right? It's Groundhog's Day. So anyways, I didn't mean to get emotional, but
how could you not?
Yeah, it was a very, very rough go. And every time and it was stressful on my mom because my dad would wake up all night. And so there was so many crazy stories like that. And here's the thing. I guess if you're like super wealthy, you can just pay your way to not see it. That's not our family, like at all. We were never going to do that, even though I totally understand why people do.
What exactly?
Like put my dad in a home. We went through so many thinking about it, and then to see his fear of like, even when he comes to my house, he'd be like, "Where's mom? Where's mom?" Like he'd panic. And I was with him 5-6 days a week, 9 hours a day. I spent a lot of time with my dad because my mom needed the breaks for the nighttime.
Yeah.
So it's like, I just couldn't do that to him. And I just didn't want him to feel unsafe. So for the 9 years he stayed we stayed together. And so when we were building this house, we were building him a place for him to live here, but he passed before that happened. But yeah, it was a lot. It's a lot. And I just feel so bad for people that have to go through it. I feel bad for the actual patient, but the family members suffer an incredible amount.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would do anything to help people, figure it out, because pour every dollar into like trying to get, some kind of recovery from this, or at least stop the process, the deterioration. But it was a lot of years of denial. Like, it's a lot of years of denial. 5 years.
Wow.
We were like, he's just older. And then I would get mad at him. I remember in the beginning, like, why don't I just told you that, like and you're mad because you deep down know what's happening. You just don't want to face it.
Yeah. I had similar experiences with both my parents. My dad is type 1 diabetic, and he would fall into low blood sugar comas on the regular and almost die. And we'd have to revive him. Wow. And we had to be so in tune with him, my mom and I, to know psychically if he was okay wherever he was.
Wow.
And it was, the fire trucks, the ambulances at the house all the time. And he didn't know what was going on. So it was almost like he was drunk, and we're trying to revive him and give him sugar to bring his sugar up. Or sometimes he was completely comatose and out and literally like on death's door. But he would never remember either.
Wow.
And then with my mom, she got brain cancer. And at some point she regressed to like a childlike state and didn't really know what was kind of going on. Like in some cases she, like there were, we could talk normally, but she would do abnormal things. Like she would turn on the stove and almost light the house on fire, and I'd have to childproof everything. And she couldn't be left alone for a second. We were at a pumpkin patch, I remember, here near my house. And I turned to say hello to somebody. I'm like, oh my God, hi, nice to see you. Hugged her husband, me and my mom and dad. Where's mom?
Wow.
Literally that fast. My mom had crossed a major 4-lane road and started walking on the on-ramp of the 101.
Oh my God.
And my assistant ran and found her. I go, I'm going this way, you go that way. And luckily found her. And the same thing, had no idea what was going on and didn't think that was abnormal. So these brain disorders are so challenging because my mom was diagnosed at 62.
Wow.
And so it was a 5-year caretaking journey, which was really exhausting and very challenging. Same kind of things where you have to babysit 24/7.
Yeah.
And no one will ever understand that pain, that agony, that fear, the traumas, unless you go through it.
Yeah. Because there's no relief.
No.
And so it's every second and through the night, and it just starts all over again the next day. And I had my kids during this time, and it was so exhausted. I was so exhausted.
I don't know how you did it.
I'm so sorry you had to go. But this is really, like you said, it's the caretaker's journey.
Yeah.
And I didn't even live with him. It was my mom, and I suffered a lot. My husband, we all suffered. And we didn't even have to do half the battle of night shift. And that's the thing. My mom became essentially a nurse.
Mm-hmm. Like most people. It's usually the daughter and the mother.
Yes.
For me, they lived here with us, but there were moments where they wanted to go back home. So they would go home for a couple of months, and my dad would have to, handle things. And then eventually they both got COVID, but I needed a caretaker. and it was excruciatingly expensive.
Yeah.
And I was terrified because, again, you don't know how long it's going to go.
Yeah.
And you
right, because you have to plan for 20 years.
You don't know.
Yeah.
With Alzheimer's, you're really planning for 20 years. With brain cancer, my mom had already beaten the odds living 5 years. You get 6 to 12 months. But
Wow.
it's a lot, and nobody can do it. Even wealthy people, it's that expensive.
Yeah.
And that's something that needs to be fixed because the caretaking crisis is going to be so massive with dementia and Alzheimer's. It already is. And there really is nowhere to go that's safe for your family. And unfortunately, you have no choice sometimes. So it's something that's been in the back of my head for a long time is how do we fix this? How do we get relief to people? Because I'll tell you, I think the statistic is 43% of people caretaking for someone with Alzheimer's or dementia die before the patient.
I'm not surprised at all. And that's the thing, like when you think about like putting them in a home, like you want the best care, you want them to love them, but they're burnt out too. Money doesn't burn you out. Like money doesn't like make it easier, right? So I don't even know where it's going to go. It's really awful.
What did you guys eventually end up doing? Did you have to hire caretakers?
Yeah. So I had to live in who spoke Chinese, and it was hard. It was hard. She and my mom would argue. I have to like mediate sometimes because I wasn't living there. And I'm like, Mom, like, what are you going to do? Like, like just, it's just like my dad didn't want her around because he didn't know who she was because she came into his life well into his Alzheimer's. So it always seemed like a stranger. Yeah. Where like, and it was just really, really painful. And my dad, we found he had prostate cancer, which again, it's like another thing that as you age, it's inevitable. But that's what ultimately took his life at the 9-year mark. But you don't necessarily die from Alzheimer's, you die from complications, or that was one of them because my dad apparently was in like excruciating severe pain because the cancer got into his sacrum and he fell and we discovered it that way. But if he didn't have Alzheimer's, he would feel it and he would have expressed it to us. So that was like its own issue. But once we found out, he passed within a week. I mean,
wow.
Yeah, that was crazy. But at the same time, it was so sad, so awful. But it's not like we didn't want him to live another 10 years like in that state.
Yeah. What was your grief process like? Because it's so complicated because as you said, you don't want him to keep living like this.
Yeah.
And then there's all these guilt feelings, I'm sure. There's all kinds of stuff. So tell me how that was like for you.
I mean, you start grieving the day you accept what's happening. That's really the day. That's the day they start dying in your mind because nothing's the same anymore. They don't remember anything. You can't really reminisce anymore because he would start reminiscing about things that didn't exist. So he wasn't who he was. He wasn't this like awesome, kind dad that was like, I put him on a pedestal, the surgeon that was just loved his patients. He was just this child. Like you said, your mom went to childlike reactions. Like that's who he was.
Bratty.
It was rough. And I've never seen him angry. And he was luckily, I mean, relative to what I understand, like he wasn't, he never got like violent. He wasn't like that. He was just always scared. I could feel like, and so I was frustrated and in fear. But the grieving process, it was just ups and downs because there were times where it's like, I don't want him to live anymore. Yeah. Because it becomes like, you don't want to live. Like you're too tired. You're too exhausted to live through this, And then you're like, is he happy? Like how he doesn't want to live. But this is a fascinating thing that his doctor told me, which literally scared our family so much, which is, this is what's crazy about it. He said, many patients become, agitated, violent because they're fear-based. There's a lot of patients like your dad who many moments, in fact, most of the time was like, oh, I have nothing to worry about. Life is so good. And he would feel that way. And because they have no stress, they live longer. And I was like, what? And you're like, your dad is so relaxed all the time, other than when if my mom's around, he never felt nervous. So he would just be like, oh, I have no mortgage. My kids are grown up. And he said that lack of daily stress is making your dad physically healthier. Like my dad's body was like getting better and better. And we were like, what? So he's like, as his brain was deteriorating, his body is getting stronger and healthier. So like that was, I'm like, so that he might live for 20 years. I'm like, in this state, like that was, yeah. So it's like crazy mixed emotions about it, because you're not like looking like, especially someone I love so much, like to pass away, but you're also like, you can't live like this.
Yeah.
So, but ultimately the cancer is what, and we hit 9 years. And I remember when he was in hospice and, it was like morphine and all that. My brother and I were on Ventura and Kester near where they lived. And we just took a walk. He was in that, he was at this point, like couldn't really talk back. And we were like, what's going on? Like, we're now in hospice and we're now having to say okay to like drugs. And we've spent the last 9 years doing everything for her survival and comfort. And now we're like saying it's okay for him to go. And my brother and I are like best friends. We're like the same, people say we're the same spirit. That's a comment we get a lot. And we just stood outside and we decided to scream like as loud as we could. And I feel like you just need to do that in those moments. And we were like, didn't care who was around. And we screamed at the top of our lungs in like pain and fear and relief. And that's what you go through with these, with brain deterioration. It's very challenging. And I remember we sat in the condo that we got for them, and he passed 2 days later, and it was so quiet, and we didn't know what to do, because normally we're like try to figure out what to do for him. And then we didn't have that. And there was like such a sense of relief.
Yeah. For
him and us, and my mom. It was just such a wild, I haven't really thought about it since we've been talking about it.
Yeah.
It was a lot. I feel for you. I feel for anybody who has to go through it.
I know. It sucks.
Yeah.
I remember feeling the same way. I spent 5 years devoting my every second to keeping her alive and beating the odds. And now I'm slowly saying goodbye to her. And it's a really painful journey. And like I said, I know how much harder it is for people who can't even get the help that we were able to get. So
we had beyond money. It's not money. We had a lot of family help. Like we always said that, family help, meaning like I have a live-in. Like Lucy's like my sidekick. So like Lucy took care of the kids all the time for me while I had to take care of my dad. Mm-hmm. Like that's how, the ripple effect of the help that you need, because I suddenly have these 2 toddlers, and it's to not, I just feel so bad for people who don't have beyond the resources, just the family to like want to make sure you're okay. Because my dad, he left this earth very lucky. He had a lot of people who were like, who wanted everything for him, the best for him. So like, that's where he was very lucky in that way. Because like a lot of people don't have that.
Yeah.
So.
How has your mom been?
How's she doing now?
Yeah.
She's very relieved and she went through a lot, and she's now with someone who's so awesome.
Oh, wow.
Chinese, and he's so like respectful, and he always refers to like my dad, just like he's always these little speeches at dinner, like raising wonderful children, and yeah, he's so great. So I'm very happy that she can have that now.
Wow. Nice happy
She had
ending
it
for her.
with my dad for so long, and then you don't want to become someone's caretaker if you're their wife.
Yeah.
So she's really happy. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice. I love, love, love that.
Yeah. How's your dad?
He's doing great. The caretaker that I hired to help me in the last few months of my mom's life stayed to take care of him.
Right.
Because I've been taking care of both of them my whole life.
Yeah.
And so I had this weird kind of moment after my mom passed where I'm like, I don't have to worry about him. I don't have to worry about her. Who am I without all of this? Like you have like so many like identity things that you have to deal with too, because I literally was so hands-on for so many years. And then I got my break, which was really nice. And I feel they're two peas in a pod. They have so much fun together. She's an angel from God and a totally unique human that we're so blessed to have.
Yeah.
And so he's doing great. And that is just all we can ask for.
You said, angel from God. People that choose this career, their hearts must be 5,000 pounds. I mean, there's not enough money. There's not to do this kind of career.
Yeah.
It is your patience, your empathy have to just be explosively large, because and I remember with her name was Eiling, our caretaker. I remember she would just break down and cry because she was like, I hear your dad's tough on me, whatever, but like, I don't want to see him pass. Like that's also, it's like some people, like they can love the process of moving someone into the next life. Like she wasn't like that. And so when it got to the end, she really struggled a lot. She'd rather take care of him, like when he needed it. She wasn't like, oh, good, now it's over.
Yeah, that's why they're so special.
Yeah.
I had the same thing with my caretakers. Like there was 4 of them at different points when they were, dealing with COVID, and they would cry right next to me. Anytime we thought that this was it or something was happening, they were so emotional right next to us. It's just, they really are. They're angels from God, and we're so blessed to have them, but we need to find a better way. Like the system has to take care of us. Insurance has to take care of things and take care of these people who are doing the work, because it's like the chicken or the egg, right? Yes. The patients are going to be, rough, but the caregivers can be rough too, because they're only human. They can only take so much too.
Right. Well, I think we really push our friends at a young age to get long-term care. It's vital, because I remember long-term care in your insurance, which
but that's not available anymore, I thought.
Is it gone?
It was, yeah. No, someone had told me that it was available at one point, and then it just didn't make economic sense, so that they stopped.
Well, I was going to say there's no way they could afford it at this point.
Yeah.
But
so you have that?
Well, I mean, I was hoping we did.
We're going to have to go check the paperwork.
I'm going to have to check my insurance vault. Because I remember Rob was like, when this was happening, it was like so hard. He was like, I would, because Rob's older than me. So we had those tough conversations. Like, I remember one time he said to me, like, do you look at me differently now? Because Rob's 20 years older. I was like, no, I haven't. Now you're freaking me out, But he's like, no, we need to have this conversation, because you should not have to do what your mom is doing.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that Rob's mom's 97 and sharp as a nail, lives alone. Like, She teaches computer skills
At 97?
to like older people in their like 60s.
What?
I mean, yeah, like he has incredible genes, especially when it comes to brain health. So we're always
Wow.
we're always trying to figure out what she does to like, yeah, it's incredible. But nonetheless, these are tough conversations, but they're important to have amongst your family members.
Yeah, I'm writing
And
this down
it's
to
like
remember
anything,
too.
finances, everything. It's like you don't want to talk about it, but do it, and then you feel like you have a path.
Yeah. Do you worry, Crystal, about Alzheimer's for yourself?
Yes, I do. I've done like those DNA tests to see if there's markers and stuff. They come out no, but those are like the $100 spit test. Like I don't know if that's real, you know.
Yeah.
But I take like turmeric every day and like those kinds of things that I read about. But I also think when I look at specifically my dad, who was using his brain at capacity every day and then suddenly stopped, I would say like if you can find a way to retire, and again, this is like my own personal theory because I watched it happen, like ease into it, or make sure you have a hobby that is, that you're working
Brain stimulating.
Yeah, constantly. Because we started playing games with my dad. By that time, it was too late.
Yeah.
But it has to come internally.
Yeah, like my dad does crossword puzzles all the time. And
yeah, I think that's really, really good. And it seems kind of basic, but it's not. And so finding passions, hobbies that will take you past retirement is very important. That's what I think is like one step. I don't know. I mean, there's so much research, but if my dad had that, had he maybe like didn't fully sell his practice, or just came to once a week or something to the office, some stimulation, I think that would have helped.
Yeah.
But yes, I do freak out about it. And I don't have a great memory.
Like, never did though, right?
Never did.
Okay. So then that's different.
Yes, I know. It's not like recent.
Yeah.
But I love education. I am constantly researching and studying things and like I love it, but I don't have a great memory. So it does like I do think about it. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're doing things to keep in the right direction of it all. And you're nowhere near retirement because you do have a lot of amazing stuff you're working on. In fact, your Real Coco line, I'm very excited to try because I noticed that the coconut cream doesn't have a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
Because the thing with coconut water is it has so much sugar. Can you please tell us why?
They're natural sugars. My brand does not add a whatever they're called, like a shard,
even a granule
of sugar. Thank you. It's really about when you harvest the coconut, and so our coconut water is sweet, but it's not overly. But it's like any fruit, right?
Yeah.
You develop the sugars naturally. So some things are just going to higher grams in sugar. So like when you see like, the nutrition facts, like grapes have a certain, like it might actually be a couple calories different because it depends on when you harvest them. When you taste a grape that's sweeter, that's going to have more sugar in it than one that doesn't.
I didn't know that though.
Yeah. It's like if it tastes sweeter, it's sweeter. It's just
I didn't know if people were adding sugar to these coconut waters.
Some do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Many do actually. We don't. Because the older the coconut is, the more bitter it is. And so they might find older farms or older coconuts from farms. It's like, when they process juices and they like take all the scraps, like those, like those.
No, tell us.
Okay.
I don't know anything about
Oh my God. Okay. So I'm not going to name any brands, but if you go to the market and you see like, green juice or whatever, or like strawberry banana, they're using bruised and older fruit, which is fine. It's all good because people don't like to buy that. They don't like the look of it, but they buy all those like bruised apples and stuff, and then they blend them and make juices. So we like to buy things that look nice, right?
Got it.
So but like when we harvest our coconuts, we just find the perfect, in our minds, the perfect moment where it balances sweetness versus not. But yeah, we don't add anything to our coconuts.
So why did you start this company?
It kind of came to me. So my brother and my best friend, they were living in China at the time. And my best friend, who I grew up with in LA, he is Greek.
No way.
Yes, he is.
What's his name?
Brian Bardos.
Oh, cool. I don't know him. That's weird.
He's Greek.
Greeks know each other.
He's very Greek. And he's my best friend growing up. I brought him to China when my brother was studying abroad when we were in high school, just to visit. And because our moms are best friends, he's like another brother. And then he fell in love with China, ended up learning Chinese, and then moving to China as like literally a Greek kid, fully Greek. He's not mixed, he's Greek.
No way.
Yeah. He went to USC, studied Chinese, the whole thing. And then he started like working because, when you have a non-Chinese face, you're like valuable there. Like, oh, you are clearly American. Where if I work there, they still look at me as Chinese, like Chinese national, right? Mm-hmm. So he started working in manufacturing and then called my brother and said, oh, there's this business opportunity. And then my brother called me and was like, we're going to be in China. You do the US side. I was like, okay. So we just started this in our 20s and we had like no debt. We just did a grassroots, did not know what we were doing. And we're very, very proud of it. We're in
how old is the company now?
What's that?
How old is the company now?
11 years.
Whoa. And so you're at Costco, you said?
Yeah, we're in every Costco right now.
Is that like an exclusive place that it's at? And then...
No, we're on Amazon. We're at all I think we're like Erewhon and all those stores and stuff like that. Yeah. But Costco is like a very big, it's massive for us, which is great. And we're going to be in a couple more massive stores very soon this year. So we're really proud of it. Like it's really a family business. It's a Chinese Greek family business.
That's so cute. I love it.
Yeah. And it's like fun to work with my family and my best friend. And
so did you get to highlight it on Real Housewives?
No, I haven't. I hope so. I hope I can.
Because that would really go gangbusters. Isn't that why everybody does the show? So they can launch their businesses?
It's funny though, because I remember when they called me, I didn't mention it. And then after they asked me it was 6 months and I never talked about it, but I don't know why I didn't talk about it. I think because I didn't want them to think I was using it for it because we didn't just launch. I mean, we're like a big brand already, an established brand. And so I feel like the show is designed for new brands. Anyway, so like they came over here, all the production after they asked me to do the show. And I was like, I had, a bunch of drinks and they're like, oh, what is this? And I was like, oh, it's my brand. And they're like, you have a coconut water company? I was like, yeah. And they're like, you really don't want to do the show because I was like really reluctant. And they're like, we know you don't want to do the show because this would have been the first thing anyone else would have said. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know. I'm very protective of it too. Cause I didn't know, I think that's maybe what it was. Like, I didn't know what I would look like on the show and I didn't want to hurt the brand.
Smart.
So it's also like its own thing, and it's not based on being a housewife. It's not like attached to it, where some brands feel very much like Housewives product. This was already, I think we've sold 150 million bottles of Coco.
Wow.
So it's not like, you just have to, I'm very protective of it. That's my first and foremost.
So what was your hesitation on joining? What were your fears before joining? And then did any of them materialize?
Yes, everything materialized 100% worse than I thought.
No way.
Also better. I don't know. Like I was like, I've never been on TV. And even though like I'm married to Rob, like it doesn't mean anything, it's like you can marry a doctor, you can't suddenly do surgery, like, so I was scared. I was, I'm very protective, obviously my family, and I want them to always be seen well and seen for like who they are. I didn't want to exploit them. And so I'm very protective of that. And I just, being the first Asian person on the show, I wanted to like represent properly. And it was like a lot of pressure, like to represent for all Asians. And Rob would be like, you just represent yourself. You can't represent every single Asian person, but I felt that way. And so, yeah, but it's hard because it's, you're in a mix of women who you wouldn't necessarily hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, genuinely, because that's who I am, like trying to forge real friendships and real connections, and really get to like the root of people. But sometimes it's hard to do it on a show like this, because I think a lot of people are also guarded because they don't know who's coming in or what your intentions are. So it's like a minefield.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's a lot of like positives, or a lot of fun moments, and, getting to highlight Chinese New Year and those kinds of things. And hopefully I'll be able to, now I feel like I've gotten my feet in the mud and understand what it is. Like it would be fun to show Real Coco. But if it doesn't, it's also okay. It's a brand that it exists and it's fine. My brother is always like, be careful of the brand. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I wonder, are you excited for this next season?
I don't know yet. But we'll have to see. Okay.
I had so many things we were going to talk about that we didn't end up getting to. So hopefully you'll oblige us and come back, because I still wanted to dive into the culinary school and all of that. I know. Let's end. I know.
When it comes to the brain stuff, brain health, like, we could probably talk about that for 10 hours. It's a lot.
Sure.
There's so much detail about it. But yeah, I would love to talk about all that stuff. It's all encompassing,
Yeah. Well, you'll have to come when studio is built. But we'll finish with some Real Housewives, which is Lisa Rinna apparently is officially leaving.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like that was her decision. I know she had a really hard season, and, it's hard on everybody. The show can be really challenging, and to do it for 8 years, like, I just think what my life would be like in 8 years, I can't, it's too much. So, I think everyone needs to decide when it's time to like shut the door on something. But, with Lisa's career, this is just one iteration of like a long career on television. So I don't think this is like the end of her anything. This is just the end of the show.
Mm-hmm. Did you have fun with her?
Yeah, I had fun with her. I was challenged by her. I was challenged by, some things that she said, but I'm challenged by everybody in some things they say. So, but yeah, we had our fun moments for sure. I mean, a lot, and off camera too. Yeah. So, but it's that the show doesn't, when I walked into the show, they were very clear. Like, there's always that someone leaves, always someone comes in. It's a revolving door type of show. Mm-hmm. And so you just have to kind of get used to that idea of like, it's like, when you film something, right? Like you guys get really close. It's like being out at camp, and then everyone leaves and it's like you're devastated, but then it's like you come back to camp and there's a new group.
Yep.
And so that's sort of what happens.
The other thing we heard is that one of the 14 friends that dropped you for joining the show is going to be joining. Is that true?
I don't believe so. You heard it. Yeah, no.
No? Not true?
I don't know what to say. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. I'm going to say I don't know.
Okay.
But hold on. But if it's true, could be true, I really welcome it wholeheartedly.
Because you're ready.
Well, it'd be great to clear up a story that's sort of elusive and interesting. I would love it, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
It's funny, just before we started, Elsie was showing me the video that Rob directed of me. And I feel like Rob and I talked about it recently, like in the last year or two or something.
Oh, really?
You. Yeah, because remember we were somewhere.
Yeah, we see each other.
Was it an Irina Metavoice maybe? Or we were somewhere, and you brought it up. And so Kelsey showed me the video. I hadn't seen it. I think maybe we did see it that night and I forgot. But anyway,
That's so funny.
It's leading to a really funny social post we're going to do about like, how many music videos have I been in? And
oh my God. I remember seeing
dying.
how you were, gosh, I mean, you still are crazy stunning, but I
Thank
was
you.
so intimidated. Like, I was like, wow, like she's so beautiful.
Oh, well,
And
so are you.
I was like, I was in college then. I was in pre-med then. I know we were dating. And I was like, oh, and it was like the first time on a set. It was like very exciting. It was so fun.
That's so funny. I was telling Kelsey, I'm like, I don't remember. Like, normally I remember what I wore, what I did. Oh my God, I don't remember anything. That was such a blur.
It was a very quick, like, I remember you came in, it was a 1-day shoot.
Yeah.
And you came in towards the end.
Yeah, it was like a long night.
Yeah, it was a late night. Yeah, so I remember that.
That's so funny.
But it's so funny. Rob had just met Praz through someone else, and then all of a sudden he was like, "Will you direct a music video for me?" And Rob's like, "I don't really do that," but he was directing Haunted Mansion for Disney at the time, and then he asked, "Can I have like a day off to do this like funny thing as a favor?" And so he did it, and he had so much fun.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time today. We're going to put the info on Real Coco in the summary of the episode, along with your Instagram and everything. And then you and I should just grab lunch at some point.
I know, we should.
And talk our ideas, our big ideas for nursing homes and caretaking systems.
I'm telling you,
whatever.
it really, like, I remember coming home one day and my brother and Rob had like, they were like, aired playing it on the screen, and they were going through like numbers because we were trying to figure out if we can buy a home, put my dad in it, and then we have the caretakers we choose, and then we would have like 3 or 4 more patients there that would mitigate the costs, because we're like, we don't want to make money, we're just trying to see if we can come out even by buying my dad this bear. It was like,
that's a great idea. It's like homeschooling, right? Getting a pod together.
It's a pod. Yeah. So like, how do you do it in a way that keeps the price affordable? And then you sort of choose your own caretakers within that pod. It's no different than, but like, doing those tours of those homes are just, we'd walk out like and cry. It's like, we can't put, and they were just like comatose sitting there. Like, it was so bad. Yeah. And like, he doesn't deserve a life like that, what he's given us. Like, he works so hard. Like, you can't live the end of your days like that.
Yeah, I know. And unfortunately, there's no choice 99% of the time.
But there's a massive opportunity and need.
Yeah.
For like,
it's only getting worse. So we're going to sit down.
Okay.
And especially before you start filming, because then you're going to be too busy. But let's get together, because I'm curious. Like, maybe there's something we can figure out. We're bright ladies that I think would have a lot of support from a lot of people, because everybody needs this.
Yeah. I'm 100% in.
Okay. Sounds good.
Sorry I cried so much.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me?
I was like, so
Do not feel bad at
all.
all. I cry all the time too. And listen, our parents are everything.
Yeah.
All right, friends, that does it for us today. Don't forget to check out Monday Motivations and Intentions on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, where we give you a quick 5 to 10 minute, start your Monday, start your week off right, with some really great wisdom and inspiration and tools to make your day great. You can get that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, like I said. Also, don't forget our merch is live on mariamenounos.com. Go get yourself a mug or a Heel Squad sweatshirt or an RGF sweatshirt. Got to promote RGF too. In the meantime, be nice people, make good choices, and be present.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or mariamenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.